and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. As harvest gets underway, yield maps will be generated, and it's important as you're gathering that data from your fields to take advantage of it. We'll talk about how to look for trends that could impact future crops.
Well, speaking of taking advantage of data, if you're soil testing, the very first thing you need to take a look at on the soil test is soil pH. Today we're going to talk about why that's so important and how you can get your pH adjusted if it's out of whack.
Another important thing is controlling our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this week's weed later in the show. But first, here's our Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about the different life cycles that plants can have. Everything from perennial or biennial to an annual, like a winter annual or a summer annual. What do all those things mean?
Well, it's important to understand a plant's life cycle if you want to get it under control on your farm or in your yard or in your garden. For example, let's look at your lawn. What kind of grasses do you have growing in your lawn? Well, you've got perennial grasses. What that means is it has a multiple year life cycle. So until we kill those grasses, they're probably just going to keep living as long as they have food and water and everything else that they need. So when we look at your lawn, you don't want to have to seed it every year, right? So you want a perennial grass growing there. But what kind of grasses get to be problems oftentimes in lawns? Well, something like crabgrass, for example, which is a summer annual weed. It's an annual weed, meaning it has a 1-year life cycle, so it grows from a seed and it produces seed and then it dies off once we get to the winter. Now, crabgrass can be a real problem because it is a summer annual, meaning it comes up in the summer. So a lot of times our perennial grasses have kind of struggled with some moisture already and some heat and everything else, and they may have gone dormant. And all of a sudden it gives an opportunity for something like a crabgrass to come in.
All right, Darren mentioned summer annual. There's also a winter annual that will germinate in the fall. It will start growing in the fall. It will survive the winter, and then it's pretty big come springtime. So what happens in a lot of fields, it's a real problem when you have a winter annual and you don't want to do a whole bunch of tillage. You've got a great big weed out there when you go out and you seed your crop in. Well, how are you going to get that under control? Well, it's nice to say, okay, let's spray a herbicide, but what if the weed is already 1 or 2 feet tall? Well, a lot of herbicides aren't going to work on a weed that's that big. So you've got cold weather conditions early in the spring, you've got a great big weed that's really tall, and a lot of herbicides aren't effective on it. It's no wonder we have weeds like mare's tail and many other winter annuals that are very problematic around the country.
Another life cycle that I find very interesting is the biennial plant. That is a plant that has a 2-year life cycle. And you say, well, that's kind of weird. Why would it just have a 2-year life cycle? Well, each of the 2 years is very different in how this plant grows. For example, let's look at a bull thistle or a musk thistle that you might see out in your pasture. Well, the first year, they grow in what's called a rosette. So they stay low to the ground, often going undetected out in pastures. You're looking across grass that may be knee-high, and you don't see something growing close to the ground. But the second year, that's when all the action happens. So that first year in the rosette, it's storing up energy, getting ready to produce seed in year 2. So in year 2, it reaches the bolt stage, where all of a sudden it shoots a plant up, maybe 4 feet tall, puts a seed head on, and tries to go to seed really quick. So if you're trying to deal with a weed like that, the best time to do it, of course, would be in year 1, if you can find it, if you can see it. But once you get to year 2, you have to act quickly too.
Well, once again, all plants can have different life cycles, anywhere from perennial to biennial, winter annual, summer annual. It's important to understand the life cycle of your crop, of your weeds, when you start taking a look at how you're going to manage those things on your farm, in your lawn, or in your garden.
Well, what type of life cycle does our weed of the week have? We'll show you, and we'll show you how to stop it coming up later in the show.
Technology is constantly changing the way we farm. Hypro innovative spray technologies are here to keep your farm at the forefront of agricultural innovation. With spray application equipment for any scenario, Hypro is here to put you right on technology, right on target.
I would recommend Morton for many reasons, but one is that they have a long history of standing behind their buildings.
Our sales experience with Morton was a nice experience. You know, they told us what it was going to cost, what it was going to be, you know, how it was going to run, and it worked out really well for us.
Morton has built me one heck of a nice building, and it should stand for a very, very long time. I was very happy with the workmanship.
Check us out online at mortonbuildings.com.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
There are no marks of conflict lining this landscape, no echoes of economic hardship, just the unmistakable murmur of Mother Nature's hand. In the perennial quest to outperform, ensure your crop gets the nutrients it craves with a Veil Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Nothing helps protect your investment more, so you can grow confidently no matter what comes your way. Avail. Hold your ground.
At Titan Machinery, our shops are busy with a brand new program from Case IH, Certified Pre-Owned. We rigorously inspect each certified machine, which is covered by a 12-month powertrain protection plan. I use this CPO seal to give you peace of mind when buying a used Case IH tractor or combine. CPO units also qualify for special financing and rewards. We're adding more CPO equipment every day, but they'll have to meet my standards first. Certified, inspected, and protected from Case IH and Titan Machinery.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
I love fall. We get to look at soil test results, and that is exciting to me on the farm.
Okay, most people aren't going to look at this as real exciting, but
What?
here's
Why
how
not?
everything gets exciting on our farm. Is it going to make you money or not? And I'll tell you right now, if you know how to read a soil test, you can be way more profitable on the farm. And the first thing you always have to look at on the soil test is soil pH. The reason why is because soil pH affects everything. It affects your soil life. It affects other nutrient availability. It affects so many things. It is tremendously important. So today we want to talk about soil pH. What's the right pH for your farm and your crop? And how are you going to get that pH adjusted if it's out of line, either too high or too low?
Here we go again, 2016, very interesting growing season depending on where you're at across the country. You had certain challenges on your farm and you saw that your field didn't perform the same everywhere. And you see, wow, here's a spot that really struggled. Here's a spot where I'm gonna have fantastic yield, or I already had fantastic yield. So how do you figure out what to do? Well, the first thing we want to look at is that soil pH because it influences so many things. First of all, let's talk about nutrient availability. When we've got very high pH soil or very low pH soil, it restricts the availability of certain nutrients. So you may look at your soils and look at your field in that spot and say, well, I just need more of this nutrient or more of that nutrient. Well, one good way to do that is get that pH back to the center. When it gets back to a neutral pH, all of a sudden you look at the availability on almost any nutrient out there. When you get to a neutral pH to maybe slightly acidic, your nutrient availability is maximized.
All right, but the thing is, not every crop wants a 6.8 pH. 6.8 is kind of what we consider the ideal pH for corn, soybeans, and wheat. We'd like to be in the range of 6.3 to 6.8, somewhere in that range. So anywhere there Yeah, we're great with that. That's almost perfect for those crops. But there are other crops, let's take alfalfa for example. We'd like that pH to be 6, 8, maybe even to 7. Same thing with barley and some other crops. So talk to your agronomist about the crop you're raising and your ideal target for soil pH. But yes, we would like to be somewhere around neutral. A lot of that has to do with nutrient availability, but also it's just what does that crop prefer?
All right, so with soil pH, if it's not ideal, it's either going to be high or low. So let's look at the low side first. There's a pretty easy fix to fixing low pH soils. You just add calcium carbonate or lime. Now, why does lime work? Well, there's a chemical reaction that happens when you've got low pH soil and you add calcium carbonate to it. So in low pH soil, you have an excess of hydrogen. Hydrogen is seen as H2 out in a field. Then you add calcium carbonate. That's CaCO3. Now when you add those two things together, you end up with several byproducts. One being H2O, water. So as you do this, the hydrogen is going to pull one of the oxygens off that calcium carbonate molecule and you make water. Then you're left with free calcium for your soil, which is a good thing, and you're left with carbon dioxide, which your plants breathe in. So you've got 3 positive outcomes from adding lime to a low pH soil, and the big thing there is now your pH can move back up to neutral.
All right, but the question is, how much lime do you actually need? So what you're going to see on the soil test is the buffer index or buffer pH, and that's the measurement that the soil scientists will use to make your lime recommendation. The lower your pH, obviously the more lime you're going to need if you want to get it up to at least 6.3. But in addition to that, the heavier your soil, the more total soil that you actually have, the more holding capacity you have, the more lime it's going to require. So if you have a light soil, it takes less lime. If you have a heavy soil, it's going to take more lime.
Okay, real quickly, why is your soil pH low? Well, there's a number of different reasons. One could be over-application of nitrogen. When you over-apply nitrogen, as that nitrogen leaves your soil, it strips some calcium away from your soil profile, and that in effect lowers your soil pH. The other thing that we see at times is compaction layers restricting root growth, and roots will be excreting organic acids throughout the season, trying to make nutrients come available. So if you've got a compaction zone, chances are your pH is going to be dropping in that little area that your roots can access.
All right, let's talk about the high pH soil. Typically what we see there is it's either a drainage issue. Poor drainage means you're going to have increased salt levels and eventually you're going to have higher pH. But the other side of drainage is maybe you have too much drainage. Maybe you have erosion. And if you have erosion and your topsoil's gone, well now all of a sudden you're farming subsoil. So the fix to that is build new topsoil. How you do that is you reduce your tillage, you plant crops with lots of roots, you use manure and compost, cover crops, those types of things. Okay, if you've got poor drainage out there and you have increased salt levels, what you need to do is get some tile in the ground. If you fix that drainage issue over a long period of time, you will see your salt levels come down, you'll see your soil pH come down. Those are typically the fixes that we talk about for the high pH side. Well, once again, you have to take a look at the crop that you're raising and what its ideal pH is. But for the most part, we're usually talking about a 6.3 to 6.8 pH as ideal. We like to see you get to that in most cases for most crops. If you have a low pH, lime. If you have a high pH, build new topsoil or improve your drainage.
Another thing you want to fix out in your fields is if you have a weed problem like our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
I
love the fact that we get very little grain loss from the head. Other brands, other corn heads, we've seen that up to 3-4 bushel per acre in some instances where we have some dry corn. We're growing as much corn as we can. We don't want to be leaving this out in the field at harvest time. So the fellow's done a nice job of making sure we're capturing almost every kernel that we can. So yes, I would recommend the fellow head to other farmers.
Compaction created during planting leaves thousands of dollars of potential yield in your fields. Copperhead Ag has developed the Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheel to close the seed trench more effectively. With a unique combination of closing power and control, the Furrow Cruiser provides earlier, more even emergence and higher stand counts, returning yield potential and putting profit back in your pocket. For more information on why you should never run a traditional closing system again, visit copperheadag.com.
Stop coring your bins with the AgriDry Gravity Grain Spreader. Traditional bin filling systems create uneven concentrations of grain and fine particulates. Uniform grain distribution allows even airflow throughout the entire bin, giving you more control over temperature and moisture content, increasing your grain quality and bottom line. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855 AgriDry.
One of the most interesting things that's happened in agriculture here in the last 20 years has been the launch of yield maps. People now have yield monitors on the combine, and they can take a look at all that data on a map and say, oh wow, okay, I've got this great yielding area, but I've got this poor yielding area over there. So today we want to talk a little about analyzing that data. How are you going to use that data to make yourself more money on your farm?
It was tough back in the day to say, well, I've got this field and it's yielding 180 bushel corn. How do I get that to 190 bushel corn? And we're making a blanket decision, doing basically the same thing across the whole field. That's pretty tough to get it to work because there's different problems, as we well know, in different little parts of the field. Now with grid soil sampling, we're starting to see how the soils come into play, and also with yield maps, we can certainly see what the end result is of all those decisions that we've made through the year. So as we're going through the fields here at harvest time, it's important to make note of what's going on. So you get into an area of the field that all of a sudden your yield goes from 180 or 200 bushels down to 120 or 130. And many times it may not look tremendously different from the cab of the combine. Get out, take a look at that spot in the field. See what's going on. Maybe there is a disease. Maybe we've got something going on. You can note right on your yield map and say, you know what, in that part of the field, I have this problem going on that I can come back and fix later.
But here's the big thing. In a lot of cases, you're not going to be able to identify it at that point. It's too late. So what we want you to do is pick those spots and soil test them separately. Try to determine, hey, was this a nutrient issue? Maybe it was something else. So yeah, maybe there is no way we're ever going to know what the problem is there, but we certainly want to try to figure it out. Because when you have those enormous drops, like Darren just said, if you go from 200 down to 120, let's say it's a 10-acre spot. Okay, how many dollars per acre did it cost us? 80 bushels times, let's even say $3. Well, 80 times 3 is $240, times 10 acres is $2,400. That's a $2,400 loss per year. So you got to try to figure out what actually is going on there.
All right, so looking at a soil analysis and pinpointing that is great. I get back to the disease issue. If you see standability issues, mark those on your field map. Also, if you've got a planter overlap or a sprayer overlap, you're going to see yield go down in those spots. Make a note of that so you aren't getting all worked up about, wow, what did I do in that part of the field? Hey, I ran over the crop there. Okay, I messed up. That was me. That was mechanical error. It's not something where I need to spend a whole bunch of time and effort looking at, all right, how do I fix a soil problem there, or how do I fix a disease issue there?
If you're making evaluations on your farm, let's say you tried a fungicide for the first time this year, or you're trying an insecticide, or a different seed corn variety, or soybean variety, whatever it is. In a lot of cases, it doesn't take much yield difference to show that one thing paid or not. For example, with fungicide, let's say application cost, cost of the fungicide, everything, all in, you're at $8 an acre. All right, if it was, let's say soybeans, for example, a 2-bushel gain, and you would have more than doubled your money. All right, sounds like a good investment, right, to double your money. Well, are you really going to see a 2-bushel yield difference on a yield map when your field is yielding 50 or 60 bushels an acre? Are you going to show 2 bushel difference? No way. In a lot of cases, just the standard thing, when you download that map, get it off the combine, throw it onto your computer, you're going to have 5 or 8 zones. Well, the difference might be 5 bushels to the acre, okay? So that 2 bushel thing isn't going to show up. So there are 2 ways you can handle this. Number 1, you can make an adjustment on your yield map data. So instead of having it 5 bushel difference in different colors, you could change that to, let's say, 1 bushel. All right, well then some of those things would show up. The other way to do this, and what we do commonly on our farm, is we will reset that weight on the combine every single round when we're doing trials. So that way we know, hey, this weighed 1,000 pounds, this weighed 1,050 pounds. And we can basically better identify those little gains a lot better. Otherwise, you just have to go back to the old school method of, hey, we're going to dump this in a truck or in a grain cart and we're going to weigh it out.
Well, you definitely have to pay attention before you get into a field and let everybody know, hey, we've got a soybean inoculant trial going on here. Soybean inoculant cost me $1.50 or something like that. So I'm looking for a half bushel gain or more. And that way you get everybody excited about it and you start watching for these small changes. And if you've got some spots out in the field where you're doing these strips like Brian was talking about, mark them out in advance. Make sure everybody knows where they are, because I can't tell you how many times I talk to farmers, well, I had a trial out there, but then, man, it was going really good and we just ended up combining right through, so I really don't know how it did. You just wasted a whole year of data on your own farm. And when it gets right down to it, when you're going to make those decisions this winter and next spring, you really trust the data from your own farm rather than some average across the country.
So once again, pre-harvest any crop, make sure you're looking at, hey, what trials do I have going on there? Be real careful, be real diligent when you're going through and harvesting those things, and take a close look at your yield maps. And if you say, look, I'm never going to be able to tell the difference 1 bushel on my yield map, then actually weigh it out and go to that step when you're looking for those small gains on the small investments on your farm.
One other thing that may throw off your yield data is if you have a large patch of our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this weed coming up next.
Weed of the week is stinging nettle.
All right, there are a couple of weeds that are pretty similar here. There's burning nettle and there's stinging nettle, and let's make this clarification right away. The burning nettle is a summer annual weed. Stinging nettle is a perennial weed. That means it's going to have a multi-year life cycle, and what we see with stinging nettle is it has rhizomes that run beneath the soil surface, and then it pops up with new plants.
All right, so anytime you talk about a perennial, that's when we start mentioning products like Roundup or maybe Tordon, something like that, products that can get down into that extensive root system. But you know what, with stinging nettle, we've actually had pretty good luck with 2,4-D. Yes, I realize there are products like Goal and Ronstar out there that may be labeled, but actually for us, 2,4-D has worked out just fine.
We've had pretty good luck with 2,4-D because we're hitting it and we're in a grassy area, and then we let the grass growth choke out any future stinging nettle. And where are we going to see it? We're going to see it in tree lines. We're going to see it in fence lines, these kinds of places.
Right. Typically, we don't see this weed out in crop fields. If we did, we'd probably just use Roundup, maybe 2,4-D, dicamba, depending on the crop.
That's all the time we have for our Weed of the Week, stinging nettle, but our Iron Talk is coming up next.
My soybeans are 100% Liberty Link. I started the Liberty Link approximately 6 years ago, going with the glyphosate system before that, and just noticing that I wasn't getting the control that I really wanted. Started in with the Liberty Link system, and it's been very satisfactory. Well, the velvet leaf is probably my most hated weed. I'll walk across a field 40 rods to pull a velvet leaf if I know it's there. And when I did spray, there were a lot of velvet leaf out here, and I have not found any. And I use a pre on the beans, and we can just come back and clean it up with our Liberty, and it does a good job. If you ever break out of weeds, you know, you may be losing 20 to 30% as far as your production goes. Well, looking out across my bean field, I'm seeing that, you know, the weed control's been good.
The Liberty Link system, a simply better solution, now backed by the Liberty Weed Control Guarantee, because Liberty is simply better weed control by Bayer.
At Fisher Tradition Farms, we Verus all of our acres, and any new additional acres are automatically Verus. Verus maps allow us to know exactly where our soil types change and how much they change. We use AgroLiquid's Enhance, High Energy N, and Access that allows us to add sulfur. We can customize our AgroLiquid products on a per pound, per acre basis as needed.
Apply Gypsoil on your farm to add cost-effective sulfur to soils and improve soil structure. Gypsoil increases calcium and helps flush excess magnesium in tight soils, improve air and water infiltration, and reduce problem wet spots and crusting. Better soil quality means better water quality, so Gypsoil is good for the environment too. For more information about putting Gypsoil to work on your farm, call 866-GYPSOIL or 497-7645. Visit online at gypsoil.com.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
We have a school and a church nearby. I actually go to the classroom to educate the students about what's going on here on my farm. The system that I have, I tie everything together. No-till, cover crops. We applied AgroLiquid in-furrow with our soybeans this year. It seemed like they jumped out of the soil, even though we had the record rainfall. I really feel that I'm feeding my plant on a consistent year-round basis throughout the growing season.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Adding a grain cart to your operation is like adding another half a combine in the time savings your farm could enjoy. I'll discuss that in today's Iron Talk. There are many new features with grain carts that are making them easier to use and more durable than in the past. For example, our Demco cart has a hydraulically adjustable spout on the end of the delivery tube. This makes it much easier to direct the flow of grain while unloading than it used to be. It also allows you to load grain trucks exactly how you want, even if the truck or the grain cart didn't get lined up just perfect. There are also new controllers available. The auger wagon we're running has a pendant controller that handles 3 hydraulic controls with 1 remote outlet. The improved lighting on the newer carts is also nice. Harvest doesn't quit when the sun goes down, but with halogen auger spotlights, it's much like running during the day. Today's carts are also being built better to last longer and have less downtime with breakdowns or problems. For example, look for an os-tempered hitch. Os-tempered is a process where cast iron is hardened even further, resulting in 5 to 6 times the wear life and fewer breakdowns and in-season problems. A scale is certainly a must as well. The ability to fill trucks to their legal hauling capacity reduces trips to haul grain. It also eliminates the worry of overweight loads heading down the road. And it makes bookwork easy, as you know exactly how many pounds of grain are going into your bins. So if you're looking to speed up harvest this year with a new grain cart, there are plenty of new features that will save you time, money, and headaches in the field. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to talk to you about an opportunity to call Darren and me about your agronomic questions. We take your live phone calls each weekday on the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us at 2 p.m. Central on Sirius XM Channel 147.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
There are as many living things in a handful of soil as there are people on planet Earth. But what do they do, and how do farmers work with them to raise successful crops? Beneficial bacteria, fungi, and other microbial creatures are being used in the production of nearly every crop. To learn more, visit rnmf.org.